Yep, it's recording. Awesome. Okay, so first, could you tell me about a time where you were working on a process improvement project? What actions did you take to document the current state?
Absolutely. So I took a project, several projects, but on this one particular project with my recent Wells experience, it was working with our enterprise team to make sure that the business requirements for a particular RAU was documented correctly, because there was some discrepancy with how one of the so the process was basically split into two processes. And so what happened was that there, even though the first, once it was split into two, the first half of that process, even though it was documented and went through audit, the second half of that process, we did notice some discrepancies. And so therefore we had to reopen the RAU, the first half, to make sure that both of the processes did align with each other. And so the first step was, one, going back through the notes. We had to go back through the notes, go back through the documentation, making sure that basically starting from square one with fresh eyes. After we did that, we were verifying all of the parties involved, our project manager, verifying any type of project or process owners. In addition to that, just going through and again, going at it with fresh eyes, new energy, to get it right. And then after that, then just implementing the processes of going through, making sure that our process map was done by going through our different workshops. So after we finished our different workshops, then we were able to go ahead and be able to gather the information that we wanted to. Thankfully, we were able to get everyone on the phone that was needed, which is sometimes a challenge. But we were able to get all parties. We were able to rectify any discrepancies. We were able to remap and get everything through audit again, and in a timely fashion. It normally does not happen that way, but we were able to do that to be able to close both of the RAUs and move on to the next project.
Great. All righty. So the second question I have for you is, could you tell me about a time you received minimum direction on a project? What steps did
Mhm.
you take to gather information and get underway with the effort? And then what did you do to ensure the direction was correct?
Well, I'll take that same example because there were several different parts to that RAU. Well, both of those RAUs. Um, so how the RAU was reopened was because I actually took the necessary step to find out the history on my own, to take that initiative to, find out any back information that I could find, or what I call historical information that I could find. And as I was going through, I noticed, oh my God, this doesn't match up. Nothing's matching up. We got different roles. The same people are not involved. We had some different, different tasks, some different processes. There were things that were not clear or documented in iGraphics. There were objects that had not been created correctly. So it was like, taking that initial step to look at that first, and through my proactivity on the second RAU, I was able to catch the mistake on the first RAU. So that example was rolled into one where I was proactive without being told and being able to get that information.
Gotcha. Alrighty. And then question number three, could you tell me about a time you needed to manage two projects simultaneously? What were the circumstances and what strategies did you use to be successful?
Absolutely. So, just going, I'm using that because it's just as a fresh example, going back to those two RAUs that I closed out. In addition to working on those RAUs, I had another RAU that I was working on at the very same time. So so that brought my workload to about 3 RAUs to close out within a short time frame of just a few months. And so or to get it ready for the next stage. And so it was making sure that my notes were clear, making sure that I was organized and I scheduled things on time, making sure that I was always had the lines of communication open, and making sure, like, I'm very tedious. I use OneNote. OneNote is one of my tools that I use to keep me on track. I'm very proficient at my Outlook calendar. So I am always constantly reaching out. And I think one of my other strengths within toggling between two assignments was the ability to make sure that I was able to connect with people. I'm a connector. I'm a people connector. I've worked with some of the, greatest attitudes and some of the greatest um, um, personalities, and not so cheery, but we all get the end result and we get what's necessary. So I call myself, quote unquote, the Nancy Drew of that. So but just using my tools, utilizing my time correctly, making sure that I am just clear with communication. I keep my expectations daily to make sure that things are getting done and things are moving. And I am not afraid to escalate if I need to.
Gotcha. All right. And then the final question, could you tell me about a time you needed to learn a new process, system, or technology? How did you approach the situation and what was that result?
Okay. Well, being familiar with Jira is, I love Jira. I've used Jira in many facets. There was a different way that I'm used to creating objects a certain way. And one of the things that I had to learn, basically in a few hour time frame, was learning how to reroute those objects and do them a different way. And so I had to reteach myself the process on the Wells way of creating objects in Jira, and making sure those tasks were created and making sure that they were in the library. And so it took a few hours, but I picked on it very quickly. Being that I already had Jira experience, it was a really easy and smooth transition. But it was kind of tedious because I had at that time, I think I had 46 objects to create. And so that was a challenge, but again, we got through it. All of the objects got created. Everything was on time. And at the end of the day, everybody was happy.
All righty. Well, that concludes all of the questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.
Thank you so much.